So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths practice paper of 2023 on the higher tier set 3 paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper. Now as always I'll include the question breakdown in the description below so you can see which question refers to which topic. So let's get started on this practice paper of 2023 set 3 paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper on the higher tier. So looking at question 1, it says work out the area of the semicircle with a radius of 8 centimeters. So here we need to recognize that the area of the semicircle, that the formula is going to be the area of a full circle divided by 2. So substituting r equals 6 into that, we get pi times 8 squared all divided by 2, so that becomes 64 pi divided by 2, which is 32 pi. Moving on to question 2, it says expand, and we just need to expand the bracket. So we've got 3 times 2, which is 6, x squared times x, which is x cubed, and then we've got minus, then 5 times 3, which is 15, and then we've got x squared. Moving on to question 3, we're just solving this equation. So here we need to get rid of the minus 3 first, and we do that by adding 3. So then we end up with x divided by 7 equals 7, and then we multiply by 7, leaving with an answer of 49. Moving on to question 4, it says 2 ordinary fair dice are rolled. Complete the tree diagram. So each branch needs to add up to 1. So here we've got 1/6, so this must be 5/6. We've got 5/6 again, and 1/6 and 5/6. Question B then says work out the probabilities that both land on a 4. So if they both land on a 4, we want this branch and this branch, and mean multiply. So we multiply the probabilities. So we've got 1/6 times 1/6 equals 1/36. Then for question 4C, it says work out probability that at least one of the dice does not land on a 4. So what we're wanting, so if I write down the outcomes of each of these, so we've got 4 and a 4, 4 and a not 4, not 4 and a 4, and not 4 and not 4. So there's a couple of ways in which we could do this. So we want at least one not 4. So we want this or this or this. So method 1, we can do that by doing 1/6 times 5/6. That's the first one. So just like 1 here. Number 2, or means add. So we're going to do 5/6 times 1/6. And then the third one, which is going to be 5/6 times 5/6, and we're adding those. So adding those, we get 5/36 plus 5/36 plus 25/36, which gives me a final probability of 35/36. Alternately, what we could have done, which is method 2, is we could have done 1 minus the probability of what we don't want. So it's going to be 1 minus the probability of this, and that's going to be 1/6 times 1/6. So that's 1 minus 1/36, which gives us 35/36. And you can see there that we get the same answer with 2 different methods. Moving on to question 5, it says the air pressure of a tyre measures 3.2 bars. Air is leaking out at a rate of 0.2 bar per day. Assume that the air continues to leak at the same rate. After how many days will the pressure measure 1.8 bars? So for this, what we need to do is we need to do 3.2 minus 1.8, in which we get an answer of 1.4, and then we need to divide that by 0.2. So using this fraction, and let me just highlight it there, we need to work this out. So if we multiply both numbers by 10, we get 14/2, which then makes it a lot easier to get our answer of 7 days. Question 5b, it says in fact the rate of the air leaks decreases each day. How does this affect your answer in part A? So you want to write something along the lines of that it will take more days to deflate. Or you could say something along the lines of it would take, I'd say, not rather more days. That makes sense. Let me just correct my grammar. So you could say something along the lines, it could take longer to deflate. So moving on to question 6, it says ABDE is a parallelogram and AB is equal to AC. And the question is asking us to show that x equals 38. So let's first of all just highlight what we know about a parallelogram. Well, we know that opposite angles are equal. So if this angle here is 68, that means that this angle here is going to be 68. And we know that we've got two sets of parallel lines. So this line is going to be parallel to this line. And we also know that this line is going to be parallel to BD. So therefore we're looking for alternate angles, Z angles, supplementary angles. All of these things are going to come into play. Now it also tells us that AB is equal to AC. So we've got an isosceles triangle there as well. So that also means that this angle here is going to be 68. And using our knowledge of the fact that we've got a corresponding angle, I'm just trying to pick two colours that I've not used. I've got an orange. So here we've got a Z angle, which means that this angle here must be 82. Now we can then work out what this angle here is going to be by doing 180 minus 68 minus 68. Well, this is going to give me 136. So I've got 180, take away 36, and that's going to give me an answer of 44. So then what I've got is that 82 equals 44 plus x. And if I do take the 44 over to the other side, I end up with x equals 38, which is what they wanted me to show. Now there are many other variations of getting the value of x equals 38, but this is one that just becomes a little bit more instinctive for me to do when I'm looking at this question. Moving on to question 7, it says here are the third and fourth terms of a Fibonacci type sequence. Each term is the sum of the previous two terms. Show that the first term is 13. So for this question, let me start by writing the second term as x. So what I know is that x plus 30 equals 47. So therefore x equals 47 take away 30, so that's going to be 17. So I can swap this with 17. Then if I write this as y, so then I have y plus 17 equals 30. I can then do a bit of rearranging and I get y equals 13, and that would be one way to show that the first term is 13. For 7b, it says here are the first and third term of a Fibonacci type sequence. We've got x. It says each term is the sum of the previous two terms. Work out the expression of the fifth term in terms of x. Well, in terms of this 5 is done by adding these two terms together. So this term here is going to be 5 minus x. Then from this, what I can then do is work out what the fourth term is going to be. So that's going to be 5 minus x plus 5. And if I do a bit of expanding and simplifying, I get that as 10 minus x. And then from this, I can then work out what my fifth term is going to be, and that's going to be 5 plus 10 minus x, which leaves me with 15 minus x. So the fifth term is going to be 15 minus x. So then moving on to question 8, it says Robin is attempting to work out the base of several right angled triangles, and basically he's using Pythagoras. And the question is saying tick the correct statement. So our three options is that the method will always give the answer as being a whole number, sometimes give a whole number, or never give a whole number. So with this particular question, using Robin's example, and they haven't made a mistake. So what we end up with is that root 16 equals 4, which is a whole number. And this is Robin's example. Then if I pick another example, so another example, And if I just pick two simple numbers, so let's go for x equals 5 and y equals 10, then what we end up with is 10 squared minus 5 squared, so that becomes 100 minus 25 equals 75, and root 75 is not a whole number. So the correct box we want to tick is going to be the middle one. 9, it says the diagram shows three routes, route 1, 2, 3, between two towns A and B. And the question is asking us which of the three routes takes the longest time. So for this, what we need to do is we need to recognize that distance, speed, time. So we're using this triangle. And what we want to do is we want to work out the time of each route, in which we're going to do distance divided by speed. So looking at route 1, we get 30 miles at 40 miles an hour. So that's going to be 30 divided by 40, which is 0.75 hours. Then for route 2, we've got the speed being, the distance being 45 and the speed being 50. So it's going to be 45 over 50, which is 100 over 90. So 90 over 100, and that's going to be 0.9 hours. And then finally for route 3, we've got the distance of 50 divided by 60, and that's 5 over 6. So then if I just do a bit of division in case you're not sure about what 5/6 are, so we carry that forward, that's going to be an 8 remainder 2, and then that's going to be a 3 remainder 2 and a 3, so it's going to be 0.83 recurring hours. So which of these routes takes the longest time? Well, it's going to be route 2. So the answer then is route 2. Moving on to question 9b, it says Samantha and Daniel take the same time to travel from A to B. Samantha travels along route 1 at 10 miles per hour faster than the average speed. Daniel travels along route 2 but not at the average speed. Does Daniel travel faster or slower than the average speed for route 2, and by how much? So for this, what we need to start by is looking at Samantha. So looking at Samantha, she's traveling 30 miles at not 40 miles per hour, but this time 10 miles per hour faster. So she's going to be traveling at 50 miles per hour. So that's going to be 30 divided by 50, which equals 0.6 hours. Now, Daniel's going to be, if they're going to be traveling at the same time, then Daniel's time is also going to be 0.6. So then looking at Daniel, what we get is it's going to be 45 miles because that's not going to change. And we want to divide that by the speed, which we're not too sure about, which is what we're trying to figure out. But we know that that equals 0.6. So then what we've then got to do is do 45 divided by 0.6. Now, if you're not sure where I've got this from, then what I've got is this. So then if I take the x over to the other side, and then I'm going to divide by 0.6, so then this equals x. So then from this I've got 45 over 0.6. I then want to multiply both sides by 10. So I don't know why I wrote times there, so let me just write that as equals. So that then becomes 450 divided by 6. So then 6 over 450 is 7 remainder 3, so it becomes 75. So then x equals 75 miles per hour. I then want to work out the difference, obviously because the average speed was 50 miles per hour, so the difference is 75 take away 50, so it's 25 miles per hour is the difference. So he is traveling faster and by 25 miles per hour. Then moving on to question 10, it says work out the value of a when x equals -1. So all I want to do is substitute -1 into this expression. So as you can see, I've got 4 particular sections. So looking at this first one, I get a equals. Now if I substitute -1 into there, into that bracket, I end up with -1 minus 4, which is -5. I then multiply that by this bracket, so if I then substitute x equals -1, I get -1 plus 3, which is times 2. I then have that over -1 times, and if I substitute -1 into this bracket here, I end up with -2. So then simplifying all of this, I get -5 times 2, which is -10, and I've got -1 times -2, which is +2. So -10 divided by 2 is -5. For question 10b, it then says when x is between 2 and 4, circle your answer. So for this, what we end up with is if I substitute a number into each of these, then that first bracket, the one in yellow, well, that first bracket is always going to be negative because the number I'm going to be using for x is less than 4. If I'm then substituting a number into x, the green bracket, well, that's always going to be positive because x is going to be a positive number. Then with the denominator, well, x is always going to be a positive number, so that's a positive. And that bracket, well, that's also going to be positive because I'm subtracting 1 from a number that's bigger than 1, so that's also going to be positive. So looking at this, a negative times a positive will always give me a negative answer, and a positive times a positive will always give me a positive answer, and then a negative number divided by a positive number will always equal a negative number. So then the correct answer is that a is going to be negative. Moving on to question 11, it says estimate the value of 19.4 squared plus 30 root 104. So for this, we want to round this up to one significant figure, so that's going to be 20 squared, and it's going to be plus 30, and then this root, we want to round that root number up to the nearest square number, which is 100. So then simplifying this, we get 400 plus 30 times 10. This becomes 300. So I've got 400 plus 300, which is 700. Moving on to question 12, it says that Christopher buys a fridge from a shop for £259. The cost of the journey is proportional to the distance from the shop. For a journey of 8 miles, it costs £20. Christopher lives 14 miles from the shop. Will the total cost of the fridge and delivery be more than £300? So first of all, let's just use a bit of algebra and say that the delivery we'll just put as x, and the distance we'll just write as y. So then looking at this statement here, that we can say that x is proportional to y, and then it then turns into a direct proportion, so I can change that proportional symbols to equal k, and then I'm going to use these two numbers to work out what k is. So I've got when x equals 8, when y equals 8, when y, I wrote that there. I've now decided what I'm doing, so that's going to be 20, and that's going to be 8. So then from this we've then got 20 equals k times 8. So k equals 20 divided by 8. So k equals, and that's going to give me a value of 2.5, because then that becomes 5 over 2, which is 2.5. So that means then the formula is x equals 2.5 y. Now the next question we then need to work out, or the next part we need to work out, is when y equals 14. So when y equals 14, x is going to equal 2.5 times 14. So if I then do 14 multiplied by 25, I then get 20, and then 8 plus 2 is 100, and then I've got 0 and then 25. So then that's going to give me a total of 350. So it's going to be 35. So that's going to be delivery cost. So the delivery cost equals £35. So then the total cost is going to be £259 plus £35, which comes up to a grand total of £294. So the question, will the total cost of the fridge and delivery be more than £300? The answer is no. It will be £294 or £6 less. So moving on to question 13a, it says AC is the diagonal of a kite ABCD. A is the point 11, C is the point 35. The diagonals of the kite intersect at M, the midpoint of AC, and we know that A to M is equal to B to M, and B to M is in the ratio of M to D in the ratio of 1 to 2. Work out the possible coordinates of B and D. So first of all, let's start by labelling the points of A and labelling the points of C and the midpoint, which is M. Now, the diagonals of a kite are perpendicular, so we need to draw a perpendicular line going perpendicular to AC, but also going through M. So that's going to be a line that basically goes here. Actually, let me do that a little bit properly with a straight line. So we can do that properly. So let me just draw a line that's perpendicular, and let me just try and get that as accurate as possible. So we're looking there, then if I extend this line, we get something that looks like this. So this is the line. So we know that B and D need to be somewhere on this line. So in terms of potential destinations of B, well, we know that A to M is equal to B to M. So if A to M, as you can see, is kind of like 1 to the right and 2 up. So we're looking at going through 2 squares diagonally, so that B must either be here or here. So I'm going to label this as B1 and this point here is B2. Now, if this point here, if we're going for B1, then if I draw the start of my kite, that the distance of B to M, which is going across 2 diagonals, so that means then M to D is going to be going 2 diagonals, so it's either going to be here. So if I'm using B1, D1 is going to be there to make my kite. So one possible set of coordinates is B being at 0, 4 and D being at 6, 1. Or, and there is an or, I could have this point here as B2, so I could have B at being at 4, 1, or I could have, B2, 4, 2. So let me just write that as a 2. And D would therefore be, well, if that's 2 squares there, then looking at 4, so that's going to be here. So that's going to be D2. And so D is going to be -2, 5. So there's 2 possible set of answers you can give for this particular question, depending on how you're interpreting the question. Moving on to question 13b, it says that xy is the vector of 1, 3 on the square grid. Write down the vector that is the same size as xy but perpendicular to xy. So again, possible ones you could have. So if we're having the same length, so it's going to go diagonally through a 1/3 square. So perpendicular is going to be here. So it's going to look like that. Or alternately, it could be this one here. in which then you could have a possible answer of 3 minus 1, or you could have minus 3, 1. Then moving on to question 14, it says work out the value of 8 to the power of minus 1/3. So 8 to the power of minus 1/3. So a minus means a reciprocal. And then we're doing the cube. Anything to the power of a third is basically the cube root. So I'm going to do the cube root of 8. So that's going to give me an answer of 1/2. Moving on to question 15, it says the graph y equals 2x is shown, and it says by drawing the graph y equals 2x squared minus 1 on the grid, work out an approximate solution to 2x squared minus 1 equals 2x. So for this, what I need to do is I need to do a table of values. So I'm using y equals 2x squared minus 1, and I'm going to try and use the x values that they've given me on the diagram. So I've got minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So then substituting numbers in, well, this one's going to be 2 lots of minus 2 squared, take away 1, so that's 2, times 4, take away 1, so that's going to give me 7. Then with this one here, I've got 2 minus 1 squared minus 1, so that's going to be 2 times 1 minus 1, which gives me an answer of 1. Then I've got 2 times 0 squared, take away 1. Well, that's just going to be minus 1. And then this one here is going to be 2 times 1 squared, take away 1, which gives me 1. This one is going to be the same as the other one, so that's going to be 7. And this value here is going to be 2 lots of 3 squared, take away 1. So that's 18, take away 1, which is 17, which doesn't quite fit on my graph. So I'm going to be plotting these coordinates here. So let's do just that. So I've got minus 2, it's at 7, so that's there. Minus 1, it's at 1, which is there. At 0, it's at minus 1. At 1, it's at 1. And at 2, it's at 7. And what you then want to do is, as accurately as you can, is to join those points up with a smooth curve, trying your best to go through the point, which clearly I completely missed there. So let's try that again, and hopefully you'll find this a better task than what I'm doing on the computer. And then your answers are basically going to be where the point and the line touch. So it's going to be at this point here. Let me use a different color rather than green. So it's going to be at this point here, and it's going to be at this point there. So the two possible answers you can give to get the marks are going to be a number between minus 0.2 and minus 0.4, and an answer between 1.2 and 1.4. So any of those would get you a mark for each of those, as well as the table of values. Then moving on to question 16, so let's just zoom back in. So the question is asking, one of these sketches is y equals cos x, which one is it? And the correct one you should highlight is going to be A. Then moving on to question 17, so let's just zoom in. And we've got that expand and simplify this double bracket surds. So we've got root 3 plus 2, root 3 plus 2. So using the loops, I get root 9 plus 2 root 3 plus 2 root 3 plus 4. So that becomes 3 plus 4 root 3 plus 4. Give me a final answer of 7 plus 4 root 3. Then for question 18, it says convert 0.35 recurring as a fraction in its simplest term. So we make it equal to x. And then what we want is that reoccurring decimal to be straight after the decimal point. So multiply both sides by 10. And then multiply both sides again by 10. So I get 100x equals 35.5 recurring. Then using these two equations, I get 100x equals 35.5 recurring, 10x, which equals 3.5 recurring. I take the two things away, so I end up with 90x equals 32. So x equals 32 over 90. And as it says, I need to simplify this fraction. So then it becomes, dividing both numbers by 2, I get 16 over 45. Moving on to question 19, it says the diagram shows a triangle ABE and the rectangle BCDE. BC is 4 centimeters shorter than BE, and the area of ABE is equal to the area of BCDE. And the question is asking us to work out the length of BE. So let's start first of all by using a bit of algebra. So if we label the height of BC as x, then we know that CD is 4 centimeters longer. So that's going to be x plus 4. So then working out the area of this rectangle, which I'm just going to shade in yellow, that we know that that area there is going to be x lots of x plus 4. Now we know that the area of ABE is equal to the area of BCD. So then if I then work out the area of ABE, now for this I'm going to have to use the cosine rule. So that's going to be a half AB sine C. So I'm going to label this is A, this is B, and this is angle C. So then what I end up with is a half times 12 times x plus 4 multiplied by sine 30. Now simplifying this, well, a half times 12 is 6, and so I've got 6 times x plus 4, and I also know that sine 30 is a half. So what I end up with is that all of this equals 3x plus 4. Now it then says that the two areas have got to be equal to each other. So let me just start by labeling this as area of ABE. And this is the area of BCDE. So if I make those two things equal to each other, so I end up with x plus 4 equals 3x plus 4, and then neatening all of this up by taking all of this to the side, we end up with x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0. And then factorising this, we get x plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. So x equals minus 4 or positive 3. Well, x can't equal a negative number, so x can't be negative, as we'll end up with a negative BC or negative length. So x must equal 3. Now the question is not asking us to work out the length of BC, it's actually asking us to work out the length of BE. So the length of BE is x plus 4, and we know that x equals 3, so it's going to be 3 plus 4, which is 7 centimeters. Then moving on to question 20, it says the histogram shows information about the time some children took to complete a puzzle, and it says estimate the number of students who took less than 85 seconds to complete the puzzle. So what we want to do is we're wanting to work out the area of the histogram that is at the left hand side of 85. Now that line is not straight at all, so let me just try that again. And what you want to do is draw a straight line. Let's use a more highlighted colour. At 85. Now the fact that we haven't got accurate squares doesn't really make a difference. Like so. So what we want to do is to work out the area of this bit here, this bar here in its entirety, and let's go for this bar here. So then working out this blue bit, well, the area is going to be 1 times 5, which is 5. Then working out the area of this green area, well, that's going to be 10 times the frequency density, which is 0.6, which is 6. And then this orange area, that's got a width of 30 and a height of 0.3. So 30 times 0.3 is going to give me 9. So then adding up those three numbers, I get a total of 20. Now moving on to question 21, it says work out the value of 7 root 5 minus root 2 of 2/9. Give your answer in the form of something root 5 over b, where b, I'm guessing, a and b are integers. So let's have a look at, first of all, working with this fraction, or the root. So 2 and 2/9, if we convert that into an improper fraction, becomes 20 over 9. So then what we've then got is, and just put a little box around that. So what we end up with is 7 over root 5 minus the square root of 20 over 9. That then becomes 7 root 5 minus root 20 over root 9. Then working with this, I know that root 20 is root 4 times root 5, which is 2 root 5, and root 9 equals 3. So I can then write this as 7 over root 5 minus 2 root 5 over 3. Now at this point here, what I want to do is I can rationalise the denominator for this fraction here. So if I multiply that by root 5 over root 5, then that becomes 7 root 5. Root 5 times root 5 is just going to be 5. So what I end up with is this. Then from this, what I then want to do is get a common denominator. So my common denominator is going to be 15. So then I'm multiplying this first fraction by 3. So that becomes 21 root 5. The second fraction I'm going to multiply by 5. So that becomes 10 root 5. And then now my denominators are the same. I can just take away the numerators. And so I end up with 11 root 5. Try not to write in a highlighter, so it becomes 11 root 5 over 15, and there is my final answer for that one. Moving on to question 22, it says in the Venn diagram we've got a total subset of 350 students in a college. B represents the number of people studying biology and C represents the number of people studying chemistry, and the Venn diagram's completed. It says one student is chosen at random. Work out the probability that the student takes biology. So we're looking at all the students, so out of the 350, and out of that 350, how many study biology? Well, it's going to be 34 plus 22, which is 56 over 350, which simplifies to be 4 over 25. So I can give any of these answers because the question doesn't actually ask me to simplify the fraction. It then says one student is taken from chemistry. One student who takes chemistry is chosen at random. Work out the probability that they also study biology. So for this, we know that they study chemistry. So we know that they're in that orange circle. So that's going to be out of, and it's going to be 35. Now, out of those 35 students, how many also study biology? Well, it's going to be 22. So the answer then is going to be 22 out of 35. So moving on to 22C, it says in this Venn diagram, again, we've got a subset of 350, and it says that we've got IT and business studies. It says that the number of students who take IT and business studies is half the number who take IT only, and the number who take business studies is double the number of who take IT. And the question is asking us to work out the value of X. So first of all, let's work out what the numbers inside the Venn diagram need to, or the circles in the Venn diagram need to add up to. So this is going to be 350 minus 206, which gives me an answer of 144. Now, using this bit of information first, it says that the number of students who take ICT and business studies, so this bit here, is X, and that is half the number who take IT only. So that means then that this middle bit is half of this bit here. So if that middle bit is X, then this is going to be 2X. It then says that the number who take business studies is double the number who take IT. Well, the number who take IT is going to be 2X plus X, which is 3x. So if the number of business students is double, that's going to be 2 lots of 3x. So this circle for business studies has to equal 6x. Well, if x is there, then this part here must be 5x. So then using the bit of information I know that the Venn diagram in terms of x all need to add up to 144. Then what I get is 2x plus x plus 5x equals 144. Simplifying this left hand side, I get 8x equals 144. So x equals 144 divided by 8. So if I divide both numbers by 2, that's going to give me 72 over 4. Divide it by 2 again, that gives me 36 over 2, which then becomes 18. So x equals 18. Then moving on to question 23, it says AB are points on a circle with equation x squared plus y squared equals 100. A is at 6, 8, and B is on the y-axis. PA equals PB are tangents, and it says show that the coordinates of B is 0, minus 10. Well, from this we can see that the radius of the circle is going to be root of 100, so it equals 10. So from 10 squares down from B, from 0, is going to be minus 10. So then here we can just say that the radius of the circle is 10, and with the centre at the origin being at 0, 0, that 0 minus 10 equals minus 10. In terms of the y-ordinate, is going to be minus 10. Then for question 23b, it says give a reason why PA equals PB. Well, that's going to be using a circle theorem, and the circle theorem is basically states that tangents from an external point are equal in length. So something along the lines, you don't have to use that for word, but something along those lines would be fine. As long as you mention the word tangents, external point and equal length, then that should be fine to get you 1 mark. So then moving on to our last question, it says P is at the point of AB. Work out the values of AB rather. Now we know straight away that P is on the line of y equals minus 10, so we know straight away that B is going to be minus 10. So what we need to do is we need to work out the equation of a few lines, and then we can then work out what that is. So if I just label this as C, so what we're wanting to know is the equation of AP. Now this is basically perpendicular to OA. Now the gradient of OA, if I draw a triangle using the coordinate, is going to be 8 up and 6 across. So it's going to be 8 divided by 6, which is 4 over 3. And so therefore, the gradient of OA is going to be the negative reciprocal of 4/3, which is minus 3/4. Now I know that the coordinate that AP goes through is 6, 8. So then using 6, 8 and m equals minus 3 over 4, I'm going to use y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Now you can use y equals mx plus c, but I prefer using this equation when you know the gradient and a coordinate. So substitute those numbers in, I get y minus 8 equals 3/4 of x minus 6. Now with this, there's a number of things you can do. Now personally, I'm going to get rid of this fraction, so I'm going to multiply the left hand side by 4, so I get 4y minus 32 equals, and I expand the 3 over, so I get minus 3x plus 18. Then from this, it then becomes easier for me to write the equation. So I get 4y plus 3x equals 50. Now I know that when y is minus 10, so when y equals minus 10, I'm going to get minus 40 plus 3x equals 50. So then 3x equals 90, and that gives us an x ordinate of 30. And I want some to the pen. So then going back to finish off our answer, we just need to write that a is 30. And there we go.